However, to put it in perspective, which is very important, our students still went up, or in, well, let me start over. If we look at the bottom, we have fourth grade. We were ranked 37th out of all the 44 schools in Westchester and Putnam. The students at Blue Mountain from elementary, 4th, 5th, and then into Blue Mountain improve over time. And what you'll see is over time they go from, and in the 30s and 40s is at the bottom of the two counties. By the time they leave Blue Mountain, they're more often right around the middle. And by the time they get through the high school, and I'm sure the high school will present that in a few moments, they're more towards the top quarter. So looking at ELA on this particular page, the students started for proficiency were number 39 in the two counties, and by the time they left 8th grade, they were 28th. They had gone up 11 spots out of the 40-something. I mean, that's significant. And one of the only things that were left to use data in this with this testing is how we do compared to our neighbors, because you obviously can't compare this year's test to last year's. It doesn't tell us anything in a vacuum. So they've improved. Across the board, this is the case. The other thing that we do is look, as I said, at these other schools, Carmel, Mahopac, Brewster, and basically I'll just go quickly, but the Blue Mountain hovers in the pack, in this particular pack. Some cohorts on some assessments are toward the top, sometimes toward the bottom, but we're always within a few places of these other schools. This particular page is significant. You have these are the current 8th graders in math. They were 40th in the county in both their rate of proficiency and their rate of mastery. And by the time they left, they were 29th and 28th. So again, moving up 11 and 12 spaces in the from 4th grade through 7th grade. And again, that's significant. This again shows this particular cohort did well, so they were above Mahopac, Putt Valley, Brewster, and the other schools. The cohort that shows the least amount of growth has spent the least time in Blue Mountain. So we have here the current 7th graders, so we only had them last year for 6th grade. They were 34th in proficiency in ELA, 43rd in math and proficiency when they were in 4th grade. So if this follows the pattern, by the time they leave Blue Mountain in 8th grade, they'll have moved up through the ranks as well, and we'll have to see if that actually takes place, and I predict that it will. Integrated Algebra is a class that we've offered for years at Blue Mountain. This is to a certain percentage of the students in the building, usually hovers around 3 sections or so, 75 or so students. The last year's assessment had 100% of the students pass. We always have. They're always, if you add up the two columns, mastery and proficiency, it's always been 100%. And we had 74% mastery, which is 85 or above, which is consistent with performance that we've done year after year after year since we've been doing the exam. Living Environment is another New York State Regents exam that's taken by all of our 8th graders. This is all 200, give or take, whatever it is on a given year, unlike the Algebra. So it's the entire cohort. And on this particular case, we're still at a 91% proficiency rating. It's a dip from last year, but it was a somewhat larger cohort. The mastery level dipped as well. One interesting thing to point out here, though, is this is a living environment sequence that all students take, including our special education students. What we've been able to do this year with some changes in staffing, we now have a highly qualified, which means a special education teacher who's certified to teach living environment. So we've added special class science classes for 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. So they'll still take the living environment regents at the end of 8th grade, but they'll prepare to do so in small classes, more restrictive environments, which we feel are more appropriate. Up until this point, we've been trying to have all of our special education students go through the living environment sequence because it is a great hurdle to achieve if you have that living environment lab science credit before you enter the high school. But now it'll be even better with that other layer of support. Academic intervention services is another area of focus for us because when the state changed the rules and changed the assessment and made more students not be proficient, they said that we had to deal with it. And then, of course, they changed their minds and changed the minds again and changed them again as to how many students needed what level of AIS. However, we're in great shape at Blue Mountain. Our school counselors follow the students for 3 years. They know how they're doing in every class all the time, make sure the parents know, which is one of the basic levels of academic intervention service. AIS is not a class. It's a service. It can take many forms, and our counselors definitely take the first level there. In 6th grade, for years, Blue Mountain has had an additional period we called language arts. We've changed that to Common Core this year. All 6th graders have Common Core. The students are going to get Common Core support in both math and ELA, and they'll be grouped according to ability. So what's really going to happen is it's going to really be quite a range from remediation to closer to enrichment as these students go back and forth through these different classes. I meet regularly. Since last year, we have a very strong unit now of principals in Westchester and Putnam County that meet. I met recently with over 20 principals. We're in great shape. We did not have the finances, as it being an unfunded mandate, for additional staffing for AIS, but we already had AIS. So we had AIS math for 6th grade, and the students still have that. We also, in addition, have the Common Core module. So our weakest students, the students who scored ones, they have a teacher, another period for AIS. The tiers above them have that Common Core module. Our special class math class, which is a special education service, in the last few years, we added another period to their class, so they've always had their built-in AIS. We have resource rooms. We have reading resource rooms. So for ELA students, we have a very specific resource room that has reading goals in it. We have the support of the PTA for Saturday Academy. We hope to expand that this year to a series of Saturdays. The goal behind there is that students bring a parent with them. This is math specific. And what it does is shows the parent where the math resources are, how to help their child, because math can be scary for adults that, they don't even call it addition anymore. We're at a loss at times. So this is really to have the students in there with the moms and dads and get some help. For years, we've had an after-school homework help. We're going to modify that a little bit and combine assessment preparation there. So what's going to happen is you're going to have more able students and students that are more willing and have the support of parents who encourage them to stay after school for homework help and or Common Core assessment preparation. The students that are less likely to stay after school are the ones that are most at risk. We're already servicing them in their school day through their AIS classes. So this is another level for a different group of students. In addition, we're utilizing academic eligibility in the middle school. We're doing a middle school friendly version. It's slightly different than what the high school does. It's already having a dramatic effect because when the students, Ms. Bell Jefferson called the students down that had failed more than 2 classes, and they received the sheet, and they have to go and develop a plan with their teachers to become successful in each of those classes. This does not apply to athletes. Any student that didn't do well in those classes is working with the administration to improve. Excuse me? I can't hear you, so I'm just going to go on. Oh, I'm sorry. So what we did at Blue Mountain, too, the non-eligibility policy as it stands, there's a 2-week window in which you're not eligible to participate. Now, we had to modify that at the middle school level because modified sports, when you look at the calendar, 2 weeks is basically, for this fall season, it's basically the season. The large majority of games, matches, meets, or whatever take place in that 2-week window. So if you took a kid out of it, then you're basically taking them out of the entire season. On the other hand, if the 2 weeks is over, then the kid can drop back down. These students are staying on this list, and they're doing this weekly report with their teachers every week until the next marking period. So they'll be doing it from the progress reports to the report card. If they're all passing at the report card, then they're done, and they're okay until the next progress report. And that way we'll keep track of them in an ongoing manner. 7th and 8th grade is the same. It's the same bullets up there. The only thing that I would like to point out, again, is something we did years ago. We were ahead of the curve, and it's working out well. At Blue Mountain, math and English teachers in 7th and 8th grade have their own students for AIS, and they have had them for years. They had them before the APPR came around, and they had them before Common Core. The beauty of that is teachers who now are being held more accountable, and they feel it, they want their own weakest students so they can help them. They want to be the ones that help them. They don't want to send them down the hall to some other person for academic intervention because their ratings depend upon that. So they enjoy that. So that works very well. And they know exactly where the students stand and what's going on. So we've been doing that for years as well. Student behavior is always something that impacts student success. They need to be healthy and safe and happy, and then that way they can concentrate. So we've done a lot of things here over the last few years. We've reduced suspensions at Blue Mountain for years, but now they've pretty much leveled off. The rate of incidence is level. The suspension level is stable as well. Insubordination for repeated student-to-student behavior is still the most frequent reason for a consequence. In other words, You're not nice to somebody, we get the story, we talk to you, we involve the parents. There's no huge consequence initially when it's a low level. We're not talking about physical assaults. We're talking about kids not being nice to each other. And then when they can't or won't listen to those directives and they continue to harass somebody or whatever other word you want to use, then they do get consequences. And more often we call that consequence or the infraction insubordination, because we told you to leave her alone and you didn't. So that's consistent for us as well. Dignity Act implementation. We went class by class, Ms. Bell Jefferson and myself. So we did, 30 presentations in social studies classes. It's way more effective to work with 20-something students than it is with 200 in an auditorium. Our theme was I Have a Dream. We talked about Martin Luther. It's very much in the news. All the students knew what it was about. They knew about the speech. And we talked about Blue Mountain, where students are not judged by the content of their character, but by other things. And boy, when you ask middle school students for a list of ways that they've been judged, they will give them to you. And they give very middle school examples. So many of them are included in the Dignity Act: race, ethnicity, perceived race and ethnicity, and that sort of thing. But the middle school students give you things like athletic ability, friends, perceived popularity, clothing styles, whether you like Justin Bieber or not. There's a million ways that students aren't nice to each other. And now they really came to understand that this is judging somebody for something other than the content of their character. Student assistance counselor last year, working with the SEPTA, had a presentation about bullying, an evening presentation. Was not particularly well attended, but I think we miscalculated. We did it in the spring, and it was for older. It was a 7th and 8th grade concert. A lot of those students were either done with the middle school or had figured things out. This year, we asked parents if they wanted a bullying presentation, and they said yes, and we had it before Meet the Teacher night, had well over 100 parents. We had a speaker from Student Assistance who went over the legalities, not legalese, but the Dignity Act, and it happened to dovetail perfectly with what Ms. Bell Jefferson and I had done, and got a lot of positive feedback from parents after that. And finally, the student assistance counselor last year, Lisa Marie Albanese, had spoken about a way for students to report incidents. Because your average middle school child does not have the confidence and whatever else it takes to go march into the main office to say that somebody's bothering them or that somebody they saw bothering somebody else. But they're also not necessarily going to put it in a box that's located in the office or in the guidance office. So we're going to have an online way. It's this close to being live, where students can go on the NHUD website and they can report an incident. They give details, they give facts, they give the logistics. They don't have to even give their name, and then we'll look into it. I'm predicting that that's going to give us a lot to do. I'm hoping that it's not going to be overwhelming. I don't think so. Our students are pretty straightforward. I don't think they're going to flood the system with inappropriate messages. I think what they're going to do is when they're on a school bus and they see the 8th grade boys being inappropriate to the 6th grade girls, they don't want to stand up on that bus and say, cut it out, but they very well might tell us on electronically and give us a chance to deal with that situation. So those are the areas we're working on at Blue Mountain this year, and now I'm sure you might have some questions. Yes?
We talked a lot about academic intervention services, and I know one of the complaints with Common Core is that it is very scripted and the same thing for every child. Do we still have mechanisms in place for those kids that need extra challenge? Even though the new curriculum is supposed to be a little bit more challenging, but there are always going to be those kids that need that more.
Yes, the brief answer is yes. What we had done for years ahead of time already, again, in the English classes, we were doing different levels of reading. The teachers years ago were using our CTP4 scores to see where our students' reading comprehension levels were. And, okay, they're reading books on vampires because they like that, but let's, the top student, let's read Dracula. All right, let's go to Frankenstein if that's the level you're at. The Common Core is rigorous, so most people will tell you that in math and ELA, if we can just have them successful at that Common Core level, that's a pretty huge success. But again, there are also opportunities for enrichment. In math particularly, we're going to do 7th honors in the future. We're not going to skip a grade. We backed off of skipping grades because with Common Core that was dangerous, especially as we make this transition. they already have gaps with the new curriculum. If you actually skipped a grade, you just magnify those gaps exponentially. So in the future, we'll have our top math students will be in an honors class where they'll do the 7th grade Common Core, and then they'll enhance it with the 8th grade materials so that they're able to go on to algebra in 8th grade and still be successful on the Common Core assessment. And News 12 reported, so let's see how good they are. News 12 is saying that they might be able to take the Algebra Common Core regions and not have to also take the 8th grade assessment for math, which they currently have to take both, which is really kind of difficult because you're asking teachers to teach 2 different things simultaneously. That's a tough one. So if that is true, then I bet not. But if it happens, that would be nice. Anything else?
Very happy at IMC I'm sorry, did I cut you off? No, to hear that in math you're using some other materials, to help children and parents, be able to look at exemplars, of how to handle solving problems. What was it, Alice? The Glencoe?
Glencoe program. It's
Right.
available for middle schools.
Right.
And many middle schools in our region are using it.
And I think that's
Unfortunately,
wonderful that you're not just staying with the Engage New York, math program.
And
So-
Commissioner King most recently has changed his tune somewhat as well, which was
Yes.
that the Common Core, well, actually, you heard the same thing I heard at that meeting, but for everybody else, where, he was now saying, well, the Common Core, these modules are really vignettes, and you can take from them what you think is appropriate and develop them, that's what I wanted to hear, because we had this other level
That's
of
right.
support. It gives the freedom for our teachers to teach ratio and proportions as they think is appropriate. Also gives the freedom for our teachers to work on number sense before they start ratios and proportions, because if you start one without the other, you're sunk. So we feel like we're in a decent place.
No, and I was very happy to hear that.
I'm
So,
happy you're happy.
I just wanted to clarify to follow up on Carol's question. But one of the things when we toured the middle school a few years ago that was most impressive was how the teachers were differentiating within the class, like you were talking about on reading. And so that's continuing even with math. These modules aren't so scripted and set up for a teacher to be a talking head in front of the class that they're able to work around that.
Right.
Learning how to get along.
Yeah, I don't overly want to, especially in the current climate, I don't want to overly defend the Common Core, but Common Core is reading for inference. That's one of the major issues here. So Common Core is not to read a section in a social studies textbook and then spit back a bunch of factoids that you memorized 2 minutes before you took the test and you forgot 2 minutes after. So it's reading for inference. So the work that Ms. Bell Jefferson did, that the ELA teachers led, social studies teachers are still going to read about the causes of the Civil War, and they're still going to read primary source documents. They've been doing this already, which is wonderful as well. Common Core wants them to look at that primary source document, see that a slave owner wrote it, and then, have that in your head. He's got a certain point of view. No wonder he's saying slavery is wonderful. He's a slave owner. So that's the critical thinking and the reading for inference and so forth that the Common Core is asking us to do. Some of it we've already done. Again, Ms. Bell Jefferson is helping teachers identify. We already do that. We do 6 document-based questions. We have a whole thing on document-based questions. We already do that. Where can we do it better? Where can we do it additionally? Let's get away from some of the matching tests and have the students, read for understanding and answer a higher level thinking question type of assessment, which, by the way, even before the Common Core, the ELA standards and ELA assessments were more like that. They weren't. The state assessments are not memorization assessments. Did you want to say something?
I just wanted to point out that, again, our teachers, way before Commissioner King corrected himself, did take the approach of the vignettes because it really is about the standards. I think that it was the state's attempt to give people something concrete to work from, but then as an educator, you're apprehensive because if they're giving you these handouts, if they're giving you these sample assessments, you don't want to ignore them because perhaps the test is going to look somewhat like that. But our teachers really working hard to create a balance so that they're not just swallowing that whole, but they're also looking at the needs of the students who are in front of them.
When we were in a meeting with Reed the other day, some of the people who were there were talking about with the new tests, some of the groups of kids who struggle are those that are in poverty, those who are special education, and ELL students. I get a feeling that we struggle with some of those kids too. How are we addressing, I know you went through a lot of things for AIS intervention services, but I know we also have ICT classes. How's our ELL program doing? What are we doing for those kids?
In some regards, this is not a terrible thing for students who have to work harder either. If a weaker student is asked, I'll give the example, it's a pet peeve of mine, is the 50 states test. So if you're asking students to memorize 50 states and then again, so you look at it, you walk in the door and you take the test and you try to write them down real fast before you forget them. Our higher end students that decide that it's not worth their trouble won't bother. I had a son like that. You know, like, I'm not going to do that. I'll do enough to pass it. I'm not going to kill myself to get the 100. The struggling student, the ELL student, the special education student, they're going to have a tough time memorizing those 50 states regardless. So when we move away from that to thinking questions, you know, it's a mixed bag. But there's an argument there that the struggling students, if they understand the concept, if they understand that the Mississippi River is good for trade and it's good for travel, then that's the important thing they need to know about geography, not to memorize the states that necessarily surround it. So I taught social studies in high school years ago where we had a Regents exam, and the students that failed the Regents had to take the RCT, the Regents competency test, in like the next day or 2 days later. Some of them did worse because the Regents exam, if you knew nationalistic leaders, you could use clues and you could probably guess who they were. But the RCT was like, who was the leader of India, the nationalistic leader of India? And if you didn't know Gandhi, you got it wrong. So I'm hoping that for some of our students, they'll actually do better, and it'll change. It'll appropriately teach them to think the way they need to learn to think, just like it will for our top students.
One thought, we might be a thought in the middle school to do a training for parents or just a presentation for parents on what the Common Core is, to follow up with the audience members' comments. Engage New York has some excellent resources for parents. I had done one training virtually. I just had at home to help students with these skills, reading nonfiction, reading in depth, taking time as a parent yourself to sit down and read a book and show your children that you're reading. So I think doing math everyday life. There are a lot of things parents can do as well.
It's a great suggestion. We've had success with, like, for example, like those Meet the Teacher nights. Years ago, when it was a different level of concern over state assessments, and it was voluntary, so the audience was there because they wanted to be. We packed the auditorium to talk about the state assessments. And, we really enlightened parents, because when they started to see how the scale scores change from year to year and how your child could actually get more questions right but go backwards in his score, and they started to, it was like what's behind the curtain kind of thing. When we just took the curtain away for that assessment, they thanked us and moved on. So I think that's a great suggestion. Unveil some of the mystery and show some of the concrete positives we could do.
The goals are laudable. We have to remember that. There's a lot of problems with it, but we want our students to learn more. We want them to learn more rigor, and we have to just work out how to do that. And the way for input, I think, we're not going to get rid of it right now. It's not going away, but to have input into how it's going to be created and implemented in our district, and that's where parents can have input too.
All the extra support
Yes.
programs that you're, the Saturday Academy, I think, is a great idea. I've had friends of mine there. They've gone with their children and they've spoken very highly of it. What I would ask is that if it's possible, because I don't know exactly what the resources are provided, if there's a way to provide that, whether it's on the website or some sort of handouts to the other parents who may not have been had the opportunity to go, because if there's any value to that, because again, I know many of these kids walk away going like, oh, okay, now I get it. And again, if you were somebody whose child did not go but still struggles a little bit, this it might be a valuable tool. I think the academic eligibility is a nice touch, by the way, because it's really, for a lot of kids, it really does. It makes them realize that there's consequences and that they have to work for things that and that these co-curricular and extracurricular activities they're not a given. That you actually have to accomplish. They come second, and I think that sends the right message. But thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Have a good night. That brings us to. No, we're going to do it at the very end, because otherwise I think it's going to hold me. Next is going to be the high school academic report.
Good evening, everyone. Just a couple of comments before we start. And, we just have a few slides to give you an overview of where we are. There's slides that you've seen before. I just want to talk a little bit about perspective quickly and what I've seen in my 18th year of education. I faced a lot of challenges as a teacher, as part of the teaching unit, as an administrator. As an administrator here and in other places, and none of them have compared to the challenges. We on, Anthony? Better. In my estimation, none of them have compared to the challenges that we faced over the last few years, particularly when it comes to how our teachers are feeling about what they're teaching and what they're doing. And I'm proud of the teachers and the staff in our buildings that this is not, they have not wavered at this challenge, but they've dug deeper. And I've been in a number of classrooms this year, more than ever, or this early in the year, and I'm proud to report that the teaching is fantastic. We see the Common Core principles being applied, and this is not a surprise to me because we have done these things for years, and teachers in other districts would say the same thing, that we have applied these principles. But again, I just would like to say I'm proud of our staff. They're working hard. One other thing I wanted to share was on Monday we received an email from a graduate from last year, as we often do. And I'd like to share just a brief paragraph that was shared with me from a teacher that she was speaking with. The former student was Maya Silber. She's attending Harvard right now. And she says to Mrs. May, one of her English teachers across the years that she had here, even though I'm one of the only 3 freshmen in the class, I feel like I'm contributing at the same level as the upperclassmen in this section, which speaks to how well you, Mrs. Barthelmess, and Mrs. Schneider prepared us. Actually, in all of my classes. I'm continuously looking back on things that I learned in high school, and I feel much more than satisfactorily prepared for all of my coursework. I totally take back all the sarcastic comments I made about Hen Hud in high school, because I realize now that I received an excellent education. There are tons of kids here from Andover and Exeter and places like that, but honestly, I don't think I missed anything they had in school besides the $35,000 a year yearly tuition. When you want to value education, you go to the kids, period, as far as I'm concerned. And that speaks volumes to what we do here, not just in the high school, but in the elementary and the middle. And I challenge anybody in any of these processes to tell us that we don't do a good job, because we do a darn good job. So with that, let's go to the, not the videotape, it's not Warner Wolfish, but we'll go to the slide. You've seen this slide before. We're going to talk a little bit about advanced placement data. And again, we continue to use this table because it speaks volumes to where we are and where we continue to go. And you can see down on the bottom, that's our just our past year's administration. We've had over 250 candidates take exams. There were 451 grades reported. 51% of our juniors or seniors are taking an AP course that does not include the other college courses. This is the only APs. And 79% of those students scored a 3 or better on an exam. Okay? So that's 70 and 74% of all tests taken had a 3 or better of all tests. So of the 451, 74% were a 3 or better, which is usually the watermark for college credit at a university. Anthony, can you? Correct. Yeah. Can you go to the next slide? Oh, I do have a thing? Thank you. It's late. Again, here's a little different view of it. We have 452 exams, 247 students, the most ever we've had. And again, thank you, Alice. It is inclusive of any student in most cases that want to attempt to take an AP course or a college level course. 74% of all those tests are 3 or better, and 79%. You can see on the bottom there, the average in New York is 67% with a 3 or better, and the average
globally is 61%. So we far exceed those averages. Mr. Callahan, did you want to mention anything else about AP since you're the...
No, it's the best year we've had. The most tests, the most students, and the highest amount. So it's across the board. It's not just one area. The scores have gone up considerably in science, math, English, and social studies.
So you did want to say something?
Nope, that's it.
We also had a good year with Regents data. You can see here just a quick overview. In years past, we've given you quite a number of tables, but we kind of just broke it down here. We don't have comparative data like they do at the middle school at this point from, I'm not sure, what is it called? School meter at this point. So these are our passing and mastery rates. You can see the big one that we've talked about in the past is the global Regents. The global Regents has been sub 90% passing since I've been here. We implemented some steps, introducing a writing guide, curriculum writing, and this past year we went to a block schedule for some of our students, and 23 out of 24 students that took that class passed with Regents credit, and the one that did not got a 64. And normally, in years past, we'd be able to go back and look at that exam, but the state has told us that we can no longer do that. So we would be able to look to see if we made any mistakes in the grading. So potentially, if this happened a year ago, we probably would have gone back and looked at that and potentially would have had everybody. But those things, particularly the block, and it's attributed to Mr. Callahan's work in the social studies department with that group, that really put us over the top in passing rate. And you can see they got right up there with the U.S. history. Chemistry was, again, strong. Physics, very strong year in physics as we start to level out and teachers are becoming more grounded just in the physics, teaching physics. A lot of our science teachers teach a lot of different electives or are asked to teach out of their comfort area. Living environment is maybe a red flag there, but again, those are students that come up that did not pass the Regents in the middle school or transfer students. So that's definitely an area where we're going to focus on trying to get a little bit better passing rate there, but it's a very small group of students. And also look at the Algebra 2 and Trig, which is a very strong number. 85% passing, 49% mastery is pretty good there. Very difficult test. We're missing geometry.
Geometry's not on there.
Very high.
Geometry was a 95% passing as well. Mrs. Bailey was quick to point that out to me because it was missing on the math side of it.
I felt heat on the back of my back. It was Mrs. Bailey's stare. Challenges. I don't want to be redundant. Common Core implementation has been the challenge. On the heels of APPR, now the Common Core has heated up. We got everybody calm about APPR, and now, next step, Common Core. We continue to do a lot of curriculum work in all areas, but the particular focus has really been Algebra 1 this year. It's where the one exam that is absolutely mandated that we have to take this year. We've talked about whether or not we have students take the Common Core exam and the integrated algebra, and the math people have really dug in and worked very hard on the curriculum. We wanted to share some work that they did over the summer to try to make this work a little bit more palatable for not only the teachers, but of course the students. Do we have that website up? So what you see here is the work that they've done over the summer as a group, or a group of math teachers, and what they did was they took the Common Core module, and it was the only one out at the time. They, in their infinite wisdom, they don't put all the modules out at once. They put them out, and sometimes they wait an entire year before they put out another one, like they've done at the middle school, I believe. Since doing this, they've come out with the other modules, but you can see, if you can scroll just down a little bit, Anthony, so we can see the other way, so we can see the top. You can see that they did some work. They broke it. Go back up, please. Right there. The homework links and also the lesson links. And if you click on those, that's lesson by lesson, day by day. And what the math teachers did was look at the modules, and exactly what Mr. Owens was talking about. They picked out what they thought was going to be useful, and they made it teachable. And it's been a significant challenge, but they're doing a fantastic job. So if you have a chance, go to the academics page on the district website. You can go down. You can just go down to mathematics and take a look at it. Don't want to waste a lot of time on it right now, but take a look at the work they did. It's significant. It's been shared with other districts. Other districts are using it. Ossining is going to be using it. I spoke with the principal at Ossining this afternoon, and also over in North Salem, they're considering using our teachers' work. So we're at the forefront of this, and as I said earlier, we should be extremely proud of the work that they do. We can go back, please. Technology has continued to be a difficulty. Again, we've with some just more wear and tear breakdowns. So we're hoping that the community finds it in itself to support that technology bond. And then also the APPR and its impact, year 2. We had very good results at the high school, but again, it is taking its toll on teachers. And when teachers work extremely hard and they get a 0 or a 1 or a 2 on their state growth score at the high school, and it's a little different at the high school than it is at the middle school, but it still has an impact on them and has an impact on their students as well. And then one of the other challenges we continue to face is just our building is used throughout the day from the time we open it until late at night, and just the preventive maintenance that needs to take place around the building to keep it beautified. So those are some of the things that we're looking at. Building updates, we've installed a new sound system in the gym and also in the auditorium thanks to the PTSA, and you'll hopefully be at some events and you'll hear the wonderful upgrades that we've had in there. We've renovated the main office with help from Mr. Merlini. You can see that some improvements are being made to the library. We have a great librarian. We're creating an instructional space over here so she can instruct in a classroom area and also have this space open so students can use it. It's been a criticism from the students that we don't have a space sometimes because Miss Levine will be teaching in this space. So what we decided to do is put a smart board in, have some tables purchased, and she'll have a totally separate classroom environment there, and this entire area will be open to students. So that will be a great thing, and that should be up and running by next week. The furniture should be in. Also, with everything that's going on and the budget constraints, a lot of people would say, how are you moving forward? Are there new things going on? Absolutely. We continue to add classes. We added a new AP government class this year. The medical interventions class in our Project Lead the Way Biomed was added. We had a philosophy and a history of film class added in our social studies. And, of course, our English 12 electives that we started to implement a few years ago are now fully implemented. And we will be, with the hire of Mr. Comfrey, putting into place AP Chemistry for the next school year. It will run as long as the budget allows for staffing of it. The work that we've done, much as the middle school has said earlier, they have a professional development schedule. We do as well. Within our building, we're utilizing faculty meeting time and also department meeting time. As the Common Core kind of dictates, giving time back to staff members, because time is the real commodity that we run up against with all this stuff. Where do teachers have time to do this, and how do we do it without having to incur a fiscal or a financial expense? So we give that time back to them, and we'll have a meeting, a regular standard faculty meeting every once in a while to talk about paper towels and toilet paper and soap in the bathroom. That usually encompasses those conversations, but most of this time goes back to the teachers, and what we've asked them to do is start to look at their curriculum that they did write, had completed, and then as soon as they completed it with the old standards, the Common Core standards came out. So it was a wonderful conversation for Mr. Mackin to have with teachers to say, you have to go back into Rubicon and change everything to Common Core, link your assessments, link your assignments and learning activities, and they've been doing that. And then metrics and expectations is something that is a document that they put out on Engage New York, and it kind of outlines what everybody's jobs are under the Common Core. And we have had these APPR discussions, and in our APPR discussions, we have outlined these expectations with every teacher, and we will be doing some more activities. really the reason we wanted to outline these metrics and expectations. They're important, but they're things that we do. And we thought it was very important to make sure that the teachers read and saw this item and understood that, listen, this is not new stuff. This is stuff that you do. There's a few new things in there, but for the most part, it's stuff that you do. So don't get crazy. Don't be so anxious. We're going to be okay. And I think that's the message I want to end with. I think we're all going to be okay. I think our kids are enduring this. I think our teachers are working hard. And we have to remember that beyond what the state says, we know what we're doing. So we have to keep our eye on the ball. And we appreciate the support. And that's it.
I'll make a comment. I really want to thank the PTSA. I attended the talent show the other night, and Mr. Mackinnon walked me through the auditorium. The sound system that we were able to install from the donation from the Live last spring was just truly wonderful. You could hear the kids. I was sitting way in the back because I got there late, and even the 10 or 11, 12-year-old kids you could hear perfectly in the back. So it really made a huge difference in the work they had done to enclose the sound room and just spiff up things a little bit. Made a lot of difference. So I wanted to thank the PTSA, but those are small things that we can do that help the kids do the things that really make them want to come to school and engage and be part of it. It's just a lot of fun to watch those kids get up there and belt out the songs. A 10-year-old singing Popular, and girls getting up and singing, or kids getting up and singing original songs in front of a couple of hundred people. It was really a lot of fun. And to keep going forward with introducing new courses to meet the requests of students and teachers. When times are tough, if you can keep going forward, it makes a lot of difference. So we appreciate that.
Thank you.
I'm extremely impressed at what I have witnessed going on at the middle school and at the high school. It's so encouraging to see how much time and effort both our teachers and the administration put into course selection and development. And I know in talking with Mrs. Bales, it was incredible to find out that Algebra 1, I think Marcia was saying that some of the equations that they're teaching is actually more difficult than trigonometry this year with the Common Core. And yet they have taken so much time and put the effort into developing such a great curriculum for our students. And, it's not just in the math, it's in the English, it's in the science, it's in evidently the social studies. So thank you to everybody who's made the contribution on behalf of our children.
Like everyone else's comments, I appreciated hearing from the college student. I think that is a testimony to our teachers, and I think you'll hear similar things from other students at top schools around the country. So thank you. And it would be great to capture some of those alumni and maybe in some future public relations, literature. I think that would be great.
That's one thing for us to discuss as the year goes on, not only public relations, but as I said a couple weeks ago, alumni relations, to know where where all of our kids are and tap into their resources and see how they can contribute back to the district.
It's doing amazing things, published.
Inspire the other kids, to see that it's worth working for.
The investment that we make in advanced placement, I know that in previous administrations it was talked about the two things that predict college success: taking a college level course like an AP class and doing well in it while you're in high school, and 4 years of math, Miss Bailey. Those two things were very strong predictors of being able to graduate from college in a reasonable amount of time. So appreciate when we talk about having open enrollment in an AP, that means any child that signs up for it can take it. Some schools very narrowly screen and say you can only get into it if you're a certain level, and we don't do that. We open it up so that everybody has that opportunity and can try.
There are some exceptions. I just want to give a disclaimer. There are some exceptions, mathematics being one of them. But again, the philosophy is open enrollment, and it's something that we've done since 2002. And we've proven that it works.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think your AP, the improvements that you've seen, and I don't think it's in any small measure, the new courses and everything, I think it's phenomenal, and I thank you. And just to build on what Maya wrote, I have two that are in college right now that truly will tell you, absolutely, they went to school and they felt, I have one who's doing engineering, the other's God knows what right now, but not sure where it's coming out. But they've gone to class. They've never felt overwhelmed. They've always felt that they had a wonderful foundation, and that that there weren't gaps, that they didn't have to have anything retaught to them or had re-explained, that they felt. And contrary to the fact that Channel 12 does not cover this, I think we've got great opportunities here, and the kids have tremendous opportunity. And you guys are making it so that they're able to take advantage of it, both from the middle school and to give them the foundation and up to the high school. So thank you, all of you.
I just have one quick question, too. Mrs. Bailey was talking about the changes in the math program and algebra with the scheduling.
Yes.
Could you just explain that?
Well, in anticipation of some of these changes, and looking at our scores over the years, because we do have our accelerated students in 8th grade take integrated algebra in 8th grade, we found that some of the students that we have coming into 9th grade that go into integrated algebra were struggling, and we needed to address that in some way. And one of the ways we looked at was tinkering with the schedule. Do we go to stretching out integrated algebra for students that need it over 2 years? Do we go to a period and a half of instruction every other day? What we've done over the last 3 years with the support of the board and the superintendents has been to be able to staff teaching integrated algebra to those 9th grade students that come in for a period and a half.
That's wonderful.
We've made slow gains in mastery and also in passing rate. But again, there are significant gaps when you start to change curriculum. And as I heard Mr. Owen say, those gaps become magnified. And you add that to the transition alone, just in transitioning to high school, students that struggle with math, it's a difficult thing. We definitely could, and I'll use this time to plug, we could always use more help with AIS and those kinds of things. But again, our people are digging in. Mr. Small had 32 volunteers from his Math Honor Society for tutoring. So we're trying to set up peer tutors every period of the day in the library so students can go, and we're encouraging them. It's often difficult. A lot of times students don't want to be tutored. They feel embarrassed. They don't want to go to another student. But Mr. Small and the math department are working hard to get those tutors into the library every period so they can help students that need help. And again, it goes back to my original comment. Folks are under a lot of pressure. They're feeling it. But you know what? And I'll say this, I'm not easy to work for. I expect a lot, okay? I expect a lot of these people. But they dig in, and they have, and they deserve all the credit. It's not me, We just lay it out there, tee it up, and they hit it. And they work hard, folks, and they deserve all the credit.
It's a good combination.
Yeah.
There you go. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, we're just going to open up to audience comments if there's any questions.
On one of the charts, both the middle school and the high school mentioned living environment. What is
biology.
that?
It's
It's biology?
That's what they call it now. It's biology.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Is that it? Are there any, that brings us, no? Absolutely.
Important to the board, I think. It was, you hit the highlights, but it wasn't belaboring and reading a whole. So that was, I think we hit a good happy medium. I don't know if okay, you can go. Okay,
Thanks.
No, that was good because that was.
Brings us to the end of our meeting. Is there any new business? Any board comments? Thank you very much. Our next meeting will be in 3 weeks, on November 13th.
Safe Halloween.
The elementary program will be reviewed, and it'll be Wednesday. It'll be here. Thank you very much. Can I get a motion to close? All those in favor? Aye.